Well, thank you, Don, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I think the Farm Leadership Council is to be congratulated on putting together what I see as a really comprehensive series on this challenging topic of succession planning. And I think you, as people tuning in, should be congratulated for starting to give this, and I'm sure it's probably not starting for a lot of you, but giving this the attention it deserves. Righto, so the first section that I wanted to just briefly talk about is the background to the world we're living in at the moment. A lot of my work these days is really looking into the future, looking at all the changes that are occurring and saying, gee, how can we position our businesses? How can we look after the next generation and even the generation after that? What sort of planning do we need to do? What sort of skills do we need to do? And so the first line there used to be two certainties in the world, death and taxes. We now have a third certainty, which is volatility. So in our planning, we've got to deal with these ups and downs, and that makes it quite difficult. We can't, in our planning, nail a plan to the wall and expect that plan to exactly pan out over the years, because there'll be a lot of changes. We've got to be a lot more flexible. The world is nervous and fragile. I read a book recently, some of you may have read it, called Hot, Flat and Crowded. The hot is about the changes in climate that are predicted to happen around the world. And I know Canada tends to be a bit on the positive side of some of the changes, but some of the things I've seen for Canada talk about longer droughts and certainly extreme weather events, that sort of thing. So we've got some big changes happening there. The flat in the Hot, Flat and Crowded talks about the technologies that move very quickly around the world. Also talks about the pretty scary thing that the Indias and Chinas of this world, with their increasing populations and increasing consumption, are putting enormous pressure, as are the other countries in the world and the Western world as well, enormous pressure on the planet. And we're asking ourselves questions as to how long the planet can take this enormous supply the resources that are needed for the demands of developing countries. And of course, the third one there, the crowded one, the demands of rising population. Predicted to go from we're well over 6 billion in the world now, to 9 billion by 2050. So the world's nervous and fragile. We need to be thinking, hey, what if this happens? What if that happens? We need to be positioning our families and our businesses. And so lots of strategic opportunities for those of us in Canada, Australia and around the world. And some threats as well. Talking about energy prices, talking about shortage of water around the world, talking about environmental demands, the realignment of global power and production with the Brazils and the Chinas and the Indias, real pressure on the size of businesses in order to get economies of size. And that's again puts pressure on succession planning, because we're being asked to expand the size of our farming businesses, which requires more capital, which makes it harder for there to be money around for inheritance for other siblings and for retirement and so on. So lots of strategic opportunities and threats with the changes that are coming over the horizon, and we need to bear those in mind as we're doing our succession planning. So strategic and business planning are critical, but if we do those things well, it will make succession planning easier, and I hope that becomes clearer as we go through this session. So we need clear goals, but we have to be flexible in the way we achieve those goals. And we've got to be regularly reviewing everything we do in our planning, including our succession planning. We've got to be creative so that we can see things before others see them, so we can be leaders and take advantage of the changes. It won't be a good world, the way I see it, for people and businesses and families that are just content to follow the changes, because the changes are happening so quickly. It's about learning and positioning, and it's about unleashing the capabilities of all our family members. And quite often in succession, I see that young people often mark time for 10 or 15 years as apprentices in a business, the best years of their life, waiting for their parents to start to talk about succession planning, talk about retirement or whatever, and a lot of capabilities never have a chance to be expressed. And we can't afford to have that situation happen. So I see succession planning a bit differently from in the past. I think now it's a wonderful opportunity to be a stimulus for family and business development. And if we started early, think about the changes that are happening, I think we can use succession planning to create some wonderful futures for our families. And finally, in this bit of background, there's plenty of evidence that says that family farm businesses, well managed and strong families, can outperform the big corporations. I'm quite convinced of that. But we can't afford any hiccups in the way that we run our businesses and transfer our businesses from generation to generation if we're to remain competitive against some of these other big public corporations and so on. So I think behind all this, if we do it right, our family farm businesses can be wonderful environments for work, wonderful environments for families.